If you've read about dynamic spending in retirement, or in other words, dynamic decumulation, you're aware that when a retiree adjusts their annual spending in response to market conditions, the portfolio can really benefit. A rule of thumb that's mentioned in this Vanguard publication is that when a retiree's portfolio is down in value over the prior 12 months, the retiree could reduce their annual spending by 2.5%. Now, if that retiree is giving themselves a cost of living adjustment, a typical cost of living adjustment in each year of retirement, then reducing spending by 2.5% essentially amounts to foregoing a cost of living increase in a year in which the portfolio's value is down. A dynamic spending strategy inevitably raises the question of how long a spending cut needs to endure. That question is well answered on Michael Kitzis's website in this great article published by Dr. Derek Tharp. The article demonstrates that engaging in a series of smaller but permanent spending cuts can be more effective than taking drastic cuts that last a shorter amount of time. This excellent article demonstrates how powerful small but permanent cuts can be. And it's worth mentioning that while drastic short-term cuts can also be powerful, they are much less likely to be agreeable to the retiree, given that cutting one's spending by, say, 20% over a 3-year period can be a harsh adjustment. So I recommend this article by Dr. Derek Tharp on Michael Kitzis's website, titled Dynamic Retirement Spending Adjustments, Small but Permanent versus Large but Temporary. Here is a quick comparison of 3 different strategies a retiree could use when coping with downturns in their portfolio's value. So this is a retiree who retires at age 62 with a portfolio of $1,200,000. In column D, we see what happens when the retiree makes no adjustments in response to a drop in their portfolio's value. They continue year after year to give themselves 2.5% cost of living adjustments, no matter what is happening to their portfolio's value. In column F, we see the strategy of using small but permanent cuts. So notice they start in the same place, age 62. They have $1,200,000. Again, same scenario. They have the bad luck at age 63. Their portfolio's value is down all the way to $970,000. What this retiree decides to do when using this strategy is to maintain the prior year's spending. In other words, they forego a 2.5% cost of living adjustment because the portfolio's value is down. Now, for most retirees, that's going to feel like a pretty minor adjustment. They are simply repeating the amount of spending that they had from the prior year. Once they've made that adjustment, they stay on that trajectory. Thereafter, they give themselves 2.5% cost of living adjustments. But they don't make up for the original loss. Instead, they stay on the same trajectory, starting at that $42,000 a year at age 63, which was a repeat from the prior year, and then giving themselves 2.5% cost of living adjustments thereafter. Okay? In the third strategy, there are more severe cuts. The same scenario, starting with a portfolio of $1,200,000, bad luck, the exact same bad luck strikes at age 63. The portfolio's value is down to $970,000. And this retiree in this scenario decides to cut their spending by 5%, which is going to be more salient. And they're going to do it 2 years in a row in order to make this strategy more powerful. This should definitely help. But the question is, that's a pretty substantial adjustment in their standard of living for 2 years. And they do get to recover afterwards. So then they reset back to the original trajectory and give themselves 2.5% pay increases from where they would have been had they not taken the larger but temporary cuts. But the question is this really necessary? And how does it compare in the long run? We would expect both of these strategies to be superior because they both involve taking some cuts. They both involve dynamic spending relative to this static spending over here of basically ignoring the value of the portfolio and just continuing on with cost of living increases without ever having made any adjustment at all. Okay. Now, I should also add that in this scenario, just to make it a little bit more realistic, we have the same thing happen at age 73. Bad luck comes along again. The portfolio's value drops, in this case by 20% at age 73, just to make things more realistic. And again, the retiree in each of these three different scenarios, they're following through on their original strategy. In column D, no adjustment is made. The 2.5% cost of living adjustment just continues as if nothing has changed in the portfolio value. In column F, we have the small but permanent cut strategy. So they just repeat their spending from the prior year and give themselves no cost of living adjustment, which resets the trajectory. And then they give themselves cost of living adjustments after that. And then in column H, they give themselves a more drastic 5% cut 2 years in a row, and then restore the original trajectory and keep giving themselves cost of living adjustments after those years. In the long run, of course, providing some adjustment, doing some type of dynamic spending strategy will be superior to implementing no dynamic spending at all. But the interesting thing to me is that the small but permanent cuts can actually be a little bit more powerful than the temporary but larger cuts. And these temporary but larger cuts would be a more difficult adjustment for the average retiree. It's a retiree's really going to feel it when they cut their spending from $42,000 to $39,900, or from $53,764 to $51,075. They're going to feel that. They're going to feel it in a big way for 2 years in a row, and yet that's not even the strategy that is the very best for protecting the health of the portfolio. Simply foregoing a cost of living adjustment and then staying on that lower trajectory as cost of living adjustments are added in subsequent years is in fact the superior strategy for dynamic spending. So again, I recommend this wonderful article to you, and I am certainly very encouraged by the idea that sometimes the optimal thing to do when a retiree's portfolio value is down is simply to forego a cost of living adjustment and then remain on that trajectory as cost of living adjustments are added in the future.